Good morning. On the subject of horror, creepy stories, thrillers, I want to tell you a story that happened when I was about 7, 8 years old. It's dark right now. Kids are asleep. But I went out on a date last night and we were talking about the story episode that I just finished, The Stag King, and how I don't really write horror. And she was kind of asking where does that come from? Where do writers like Stephen King get their stories from? And I just heard the other day Stephen King had a very traumatic childhood. In one case, he saw his best friend get hit by a train. I don't know if that story's true, but yeah, that's pretty traumatic. And so I had to tell her that, well, for a lot of writers, it's just a conglomeration of things and creativity. For myself, it's the same, but I do have I have a deep well of traumas that I can dig from. Plus, I was a law enforcement officer for about 12 years. But now that none of those stories really make it into my episodes, my stories for Amazon Vella, um, but they can be sources of inspiration. And I was also thinking, why are a lot of my female characters, my leads, why are they women? I mean, I'm a guy and everything. Why do I write female leads so much? And I've been up tonight and I was thinking, well, where did this horror come from? And then this story came to mind, and then I realized, well, maybe that's why I have so many female leads. So this is the story I'm going to tell. My buddy and I, we used to run around like most kids do. If you've seen the movie It with the kids on the bicycles, well, that was us. And there was this old man down the street, and he had mulberry trees. And in the summer, we liked to go down there and pick mulberries. Well, on this particular day, it was just my buddy and I, and we had bags and bags. We were up in the trees getting mulberries all day. And we'd been doing this for years. But the old man's wife had just passed away. And he was down there sitting on this low brick wall out front watching us. And he had a magazine. And he'd call us down and he'd show us pictures and ask us what we thought. Well, it was a Playboy or something like that. And we didn't really think much about it. We were 8 years old. And we're like, yeah, okay, whatever floats your boat. And back up in the tree we go. He'd call us down again. One time he says, hey, don't you think that this looks like your sister? To my buddy. And he's like, no. And he's like, well, what if you took her clothes off? And he's like, I don't know, maybe. Well, his sister was about 13, and it was the Farrah Fawcett days. So she wore pink and white all the time. She never had her roller skates off. She was always roller skating. And she was deaf, but that's what she did all day. She roller skated up and down the block. And the little short shorts that Charlie's Angels and everything, that's what I guess she was trying to emulate. And my buddy's like, I don't know. This is weird. And back up in the tree we went. Well, later on, that it was just a weird day. And later on, he tells us he wants us to call her over. And next time she went by, because she was always going by on the roller skates, called her over. And he's like, I want to show you guys something in the garage. And we're like, okay. It was nothing new or different. It was just neighborhood old man. And his sister, he says, no, I don't think so. Once she figured out what we were going to do. And the old man, he starts getting a little upset or whatever. He's like, well, you guys come, and if you come, then she'll come too. I'm like, okay, we'll give it a shot. We go back in there, and he's got this old car in a garage. It's this little tiny garage that the car barely fits in. There's maybe 2 feet at the most on each side of this car. It's like an old 50s style. And we're in there. We're like, oh yeah, cool car. He says, but I really want your sister to see it. I'm like, well, she doesn't want to come in. He's like, you got to call her in. And so, okay, We start begging her to come back there, and she is nervous. She is very, very nervous. Finally, she comes in. She says, yeah, yeah, great car, whatever. He locks the door. And at that point, we didn't really know. We didn't think anything bad or whatever, but she takes us around to the back side of the car next to the workbench. And he starts talking about how she probably needs that she's a dirty girl and she needs her clothes washed. That's what it was. There were washing machines in there. And she couldn't hear him because she was deaf. And so she's asking her brother, what's he saying? What's he saying? Oh, and when he signed what he was saying, she screamed, oh my God. And she was terrified and shaking. And he starts coming. And so we're going round and round and round this car. She's pushing us. We're like, what? Because we don't really get it. We're stupid 8-year-old boys. And he's all, boys, we can't do this all day. She's a dirty girl. She needs her clothes washed. Help me get her clothes off. And so like, we're okay. Sounds good. Yeah, that's stupid. And so we go to lay hands on her, and she screams, and she starts signing to her brother something. And he looks at me, and he says, this guy's going to rape us, or something along those lines. I didn't know what that meant. But the look in his face was terrifying, and so I got terrified. Everybody's terrified now, and they've got this creepy old man. He was a big guy. I don't know. We were 8, but to me, he seemed like he was probably over 6 foot tall. And so he's chasing us around and around and around this car, and for a long time. And every time we get to the door, we try to open the door, but it was locked somehow. I don't know how it was locked. But we're going around. Well, it's a garage workshop. So she grabs a hammer. And so every time we get to the door, she starts banging on the door to try and get this door open. And this is going on for a long time, long time. Eventually, she gets to the point where she about has this door open. It's been going on for that long. And this is the hard part. Well, we get to the door, and it's kind of a do or die situation. And she sacrificed herself. She took him on to allow us to get out of there. And we got out. We looked back, and she wasn't with us. And my buddy went running off, and I went running home. I bust into the house, and I was like, I had a brand new stepmom. And I was screaming and yelling, call the police, call the police, call the police. The old man's got my buddy's sister. And my stepmother comes out, and she's like, what are you talking about? No, tell me the story. I said, no, there's no time. Call the police now, call the police now. He's got her. And she wasn't really believing me or something. I don't know what, but I was trying to explain. And finally, she's like, okay, take me down there. So we go outside, and I was telling her, no, you got to call the police. He's big, and he's got her. And just as we open up the door, Tiffany comes by on her, I'm sorry, I said her name, but she went by on her roller skates, and she is all beat to hell, and her clothes half ripped off. And my mom my stepmother, she tried to get her to come inside or whatever, but she was traumatized badly, and she just wanted to go home. So I called the cops, and the cops came down and took the story and everything. But yeah, 8 years old, and I think maybe that's part of the genesis for my stories with Strong Lemon.